And I think we've come to a juncture where the maths is just impossible to reverse. It's just like trying to stop an avalanche halfway down the Matterhorn or any other mountain. You can't. It's just going to happen. And I think that's where we are in terms of the dollar, in terms of the debt. Tuesday, November 26, 2024, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So yesterday, there was a lot of euphoria in the markets. We saw treasuries rally massively. We saw the stock market reach new all-time highs, the Dow Jones Industrial Average at least. And we saw gold get hammered. And why did all that happen? Well, because President-elect Trump nominated Scott Bessent as the Secretary of the Treasury late on Friday after the markets closed. And yes, Wall Street liked the nomination. Of course, I'm the home of alternative economics and contrarian views, and I've been warning, of course, for many years, even before I started this channel, that fiat currency, and especially when the reserve currency is a fiat currency, fiat currency always they always end in tears. Their inherent value, of course, is zero, as Voltaire once said. So I'm going to argue that Scott Bessent, however successful he might have been as a hedge fund manager, has a gargantuan challenge that I think will ultimately fail in trying to save a dying currency, because that's what the fiat dollar and all other currencies that we have on the planet are. And don't think that if the dollar dies, that you can get into Swiss francs or something like that, that the Swiss franc is a safe haven. Before I go further, I just wanted to give a shout out to Dirty Man Safe. It's a really great way to hide your valuables and keep them safe. I have a promo code with them. You get 10% off if you decide to buy a Dirty Man Safe, and they'll send you a special gift as well. All the details are below in the description of this video. There's a link there that you can click on. So I've spoken about history here many times. I've spoken about fiat money inflation in France. This was the period just before the revolution and the period after that, or the revolution, where they're trying to revive the French economy. And what was wrong with the French economy? Well, ever since the early 1700s, when you had the Mississippi bubble under the reign of Louis XIV, and throughout the 18th century, the French state overspent. Sounds familiar? You had the French and Indian Wars, and we got to 1790, let's say, and the economy was on its knees. The French state was basically bankrupt, very similar to what the U.S. has right now, the same kind of situation. We've got the debt going up at a rate of knots, 36 trillion and counting. We have deficit spending, which is more akin to periods of like recessions and wars in peacetime, and even under the first administration of President Trump, even before 2020, when Congress had to really ramp up deficit spending. Deficit spending was already really high in 2019. I think it was over 5%, which in a supposedly greatest economy ever doesn't make sense. If you're having a great economy, you should be racking up budget surpluses, not deficits. But the reason why the US economy and other economies in the West are not having really great economic performances is because government is too big and we become dependent on deficit spending. And I think we've come to a juncture where the maths is just impossible to reverse. It's just like trying to stop an avalanche halfway down the Matterhorn or any other mountain. You can't. It's just going to happen. And I think that's where we are in terms of the dollar, in terms of the debt. And there's the other book that I have on my shelf, of course, about when money dies in Germany in the run up to the hyperinflation, the Weimar hyperinflation in 1923. It wasn't all like it didn't collapse all at once in the years. There were periods where there was some euphoria, some relief that people thought, well, now everything's fine. We're going to pile back into the Reichsmark. And I think, unfortunately, this is just another one of these periods of euphoria where people pile into the stock market. They're really optimistic. Wall Street is giving a thumbs up to Scott Bessent. And I don't buy it. Yeah, it feels a pretty gut-wrenching to see, of course, gold and silver get hammered as they have in the last few weeks. Yes, we're still above the low that we saw recently, just below 25.50 in gold, and we even went below 30 in silver. And this morning, as I speak here in London, it's 7:45 a.m. We're starting to see gold and silver come off again. But you need to keep your eye on the ball. You can't let these distractions ruin everything you've been trying to do, hopefully for the last few years or even longer, like I have. And what is the ball that we're looking at and that we need to keep an eye on it to hit that great forehand or overhead smash? Well, that's the fact that fiat currencies always go to zero. And the only way to protect your savings when that happens is to have physical gold and silver. It's always been like that. And some might argue, well, with Bitcoin, it's not anymore. I don't buy that. And I'm not having a go at Bitcoin. And you might want to have Bitcoin. I'm not saying you shouldn't. But Bitcoin hasn't been tried and tested like gold and silver have through the millennium. It's what represents wealth and power. And if you want to have power for you, for yourself and your family, and by power, I don't mean like to be rule over people, but the power to be independent, I think it's a good thing to have some gold and silver. And hopefully I'll be able to get some this week. I have some spare fiat currency, and I'm gonna keep stacking. And I'm not saying you should. It's up to you to decide. And you might want to get Bitcoin as well. That's up to you. I'm gonna stay away from Bitcoin. I'm not that greedy. I think gold and silver will do a very good job of keeping things real for you financially. So I'd really hope that Scott Bessent could fix things around, that the U.S. could start running 2 to 3% budget surpluses every year, and that the economy would be doing great, that there'd be no price rises or inflation, that peace would break out in the world, and what else? That Yeah, that the national debt would be paid down, and that this U.S. debt clock would start going down as quickly as it's going up now. I love to see all that, but I'm not. Maths is not was not my best topic in school, but I'm not too bad at maths to realize that once you get into a parabolic phase, it's very hard to stop it. It's called phase transition, and I think that's where we are. And I've compared these two charts here of the price of gold in the current period since the year, let's say the late 90s till now, to the price of gold in Reichsmark just after the war, World War One, and up to 1923. And they look very similar. And I think that's where we are in the phase transition. Yes, why all this volatility now with the price of gold? Well, if you think about it, gold is the steadiest, most stable store of value and has been for thousands of years. With 1 ounce of gold, you can pretty much buy what you could during in ancient Rome. There's the analogy or the example that you can buy a nice suit and a pair of shoes today for 1 ounce of gold, and you could do the same thing in Rome. You could buy a nice toga and a nice pair of sandals, whatever the Romans wore. So the volatility has got nothing to do with the nature of gold or even silver. It's got all to do with the change of mood, the change of faith and confidence in the fiat currency. If the dollar was a stable currency, you wouldn't have all these sharp moves up and down. You wouldn't have the melt up that we're having now in the stock market, and you wouldn't have these kinds of moves when a president-elect appointed a new secretary of the Treasury. And what about those who say that he might bring back a gold standard and make things better again? Well, the only way to bring back a gold standard would be after the collapse of the current system, really, because we've gone too far. And the debt, unfortunately, is the money in a fiat currency-based system. And if you try to pay off the debt, you're going to create an economic crisis of massive proportions that will make the Great Depression look like a picnic. So that's why I don't think it will work. Hopefully, I'll be acquiring some precious metals this week and keep increasing my reserves. That's how we need to think. We need to think like the central banks. Not that I agree with the kind of institution. And how do you think like central banks? Well, you just think of how many tons you have or how many ounces or grams in our particular case we have. And all the price does is reflect how fragile the system is. And the higher the price goes, the more fragile the system is. And the more volatile it is, the closer to the system being in danger it is. And let's give Scott Bessent a chance, of course. But I'm not rushing to buy treasuries or treasury bills or notes and bonds. I'm going to keep a hold of my gold and silver. So with that, I'm going to wish you all a very good day. Take care. Bye.